All right, who's ready for some spooky stories? Welcome to our spooky stories for all ages. Woohoo! Hey, welcome, my dears. Welcome to Spooky Stories. Y'all remember my friends Jack and Jill? We're back for another spooky, scary skeleton stories with Jack and Jill, and they had so much fun last year that they brought along some friends to join the fun. I'd like you to meet Bones. This is Bones the dog, and this is Pumpkin the cat, and they're going to tell some stories this year. They're going to share some bone-tingling but not too scary stories with us. Now let's start with Bones. Of course, you know Bunny and Bear as well. They wanted to join in. They play in the creative corner in the back all the time. So Bones is going to start us with a story about how to be a good dog, how to be a good ghost dog. So, you ready, Bones? This is a story about a white dog named Ghost. Once there was a boy who had a friendly white dog named Ghost. Now, Joey and Ghost were best friends. They loved to roam the countryside looking for adventure. They climbed rocks and they waded through cool streams. Joey's neighbors all liked Ghost too. And one day, Farmer Green saw the two friends walk by his farm. "Now there goes that boy and his white dog again," he said. "They're lucky to have each other." That day, Joey and Ghost were hunting squirrels. They never caught any, but the chase was the fun part. Ghost would sniff them out, and then the two friends would run around squirrel until it hid in a tree. Suddenly, Ghost spotted a squirrel. Then Joey saw the squirrel, and Ghost ran around a rock. When Joey got to the other side of the rock, he stopped. Ghost barked at Joey. "What's wrong, boy?" he asked. Ghost kept barking and barking until Joey backed up behind the rock. Then Ghost moved. Now Joey could see why his friend was barking. There was a large black snake that was coiled up next to the rock. Ghost had protected Joey. "What a good boy," Joey said. "Let's go home." Now that night, Joey said goodnight to Ghost, and then he left a treat for him on the doorstep. "See you in the morning," he said. The next morning, Joey jumped out of bed and ran downstairs. Outside, he whistled for Ghost. "Ghost, come here, boy," he called. But Ghost did not come. Joey wondered where his best friend could be. He ran to the barn to find his father. "Have you seen Ghost?" he asked. Joey's dad climbed down from the tractor. "Son, I found Ghost this morning," his father started. "He wasn't moving, so I took him to Dr. Parker's house. I'm afraid there was nothing he could do. Ghost was very old." Now Joey was heartbroken. He would miss his friend so much. He wondered who would explore the woods with him. After Ghost was gone, Joey spent most of his time alone in the woods. He walked along the creeks where he had once played with Ghost. And one day, Joey ventured farther than he'd ever gone before. He was walking along the edge of a ravine, and suddenly he lost his footing. The rock gave way, and Joey landed on a ledge below. Joey's leg was twisted and scraped, and he couldn't climb out of the ravine. Joey yelled for help. "Help! Help! Help!" But no one was close enough to hear him. And a few miles down the road, Farmer Green was working in his field, and it was a very hot day. He wiped the sweat from his brow, and just then, he noticed a white dog running towards him, and it looked an awful lot like Joey's dog. The dog barked and barked and barked at him, and Farmer Green tried to drive his tractor through rows of beans, but the dog ran right in front of the tractor's wheels. Bark, 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 bark. Farmer Green blew the tractor's horn, but the dog would not budge. Finally, Farmer Green turned the engine off and climbed down on his tractor. "Where's your friend?" he asked. "Now go find him." That dog was very persistent. He continued to bark at Farmer Green, and then he ran up to Farmer Green. He grabbed the man's trousers in his mouth, and he tried to pull him along. So Farmer Green finally followed the dog through the woods. They wandered through miles and miles through thick brush and tall trees, and every few feet the dog would look back at Farmer Green. He wanted to be really sure he was following him. They came closer to the ravine, and then the dog disappeared in the brush. "Now, where did you go?" called the farmer. Then he heard the boy's cries. "Hello! Hello!" yelled Farmer Green. "Are you hurt?" Joey was trying to yell for help. He had almost given up, and then he heard the man yelling at him. Joey looked up from the ledge. He could see Farmer Green standing at the edge of the ravine. The man was peering down at Joey, and he could barely see him through the trees. I'm okay, but my leg is hurt, Joey yelled back. I can't make it up there all by myself. Hang on, said the farmer. I'll help you up. So Farmer Green found a strong vine. He held one end of the vine, and then he threw the other end to Joey. Use this to pull yourself up, he said. Joey grabbed onto the vine. It was strong and thick like a rope, and using his good leg, Joey pulled himself up to the side of the ravine near the top, and then Farmer Green reached over and pulled Joey onto the rocks. Thank you, said Joey. He tried to catch his breath. Farmer Green helped Joey sit up on the rocks. Now let's have a look at that leg, he said. Joey's leg was still bleeding. It hurts, Joey said, but I think I can walk. Well, let's find a branch you can use as a crutch, Farmer Green said. Farmer Green pulled the bark off one of the branches, and then he helped Joey to his feet. You could use this branch as a crutch, he said. Now let's get you home. Joey stood up shakily. Thank you, Farmer Green, he said. Joey steadied himself with the crutch, and Farmer Green held onto his other arm, and they hiked through the brush. When they came to a clearing, Farmer Green spoke. That's some dog of yours you got there, he said. What do you mean? Asked Joey. I mean, you'd be sitting here in that ravine if that white dog didn't show me where you were, said Farmer Green. He came to my field and he barked and he barked and he barked, and they led me out of the woods to find you. Now Joey could not believe what the Farmer Green was saying. That couldn't have been my dog, sir, whispered the boy. My dog died almost a month ago. Now see, even a ghost dog can be a good dog and a good storyteller. Thank you, Bones. Now it's time for a perfectly spooky story with our kitty cat here, Pumpkin. Now Pumpkin is a witch's cat, and she wants to share a very special story about a witch's cat that was a little different than the rest. Come on in. This is The Witch's Cat's Kitten by Shirley Ann Adrilla Beasel. Once upon a time, Halloween, there was a witch's cat that was very unhappy. It wasn't that she was unhappy about the witch, for she had lived with her most of her life. She wasn't unhappy about riding on the broomstick either. It was exciting to sail over the moon and sweep down frightened children on Halloween. The witch's cat knew that children really liked to be frightened. They even made jack-o'-lanterns to frighten each other. No, it was none of these things that made the cat unhappy. It was exciting to sail over the moon and swoop down and frighten children on Halloween. It was her secret that made her unhappy. Every year since she could remember, Shadow, for that was the witch's cat's name, had a family of beautiful kittens. They were always born in the spring when the flowers were beginning to bloom, and Shadow's kittens were always black as night. They had the biggest green eyes and the very sleekest fur, and the old witch was very proud of them, for the young witches begged for Shadow's kittens when they were preparing for their first rides. This year, just 2 weeks before Halloween, Shadow had a kitten, just one kitten. She looked down at her tiny baby and wondered in alarm, for this kitten didn't look like the other kittens. Never had she seen such a witch's cat kitten. The old witch would be very angry. Shadow tried to think of how she could hide her baby. She was sure the witch would not like the new kitten, though it was the finest baby she had ever seen. She must keep the secret as long as she could. The old witch must not know about this wonderful child of hers. At first it was easy, for all the kitten did was eat and sleep in the old basket in the pantry cupboard. Then one day her eyes opened, and Shadow was pleased yet alarmed to see that they were blue instead of the usual green, and the kitten was white. Now the kitten could see her mother, and it was high time for her to learn to talk. Now all witches' cats can talk. That is part of the fun of being a witch's cat. So Shadow taught her baby to be very polite, and the kitten learned to say, yes, please, and no, thank you, and all the proper words that might please the witch on her dreadful day when Shadow's secret would be discovered, that she was in fact a white cat. So the old witch had not suspected a thing. She was too busy worrying about herself. She'd been worrying about all the things because she was wishing for something that would never come true. What she wanted more than anything else in the world was to be frightened. Really frightened. The way the children were frightened when she peered into their faces on Halloween. They shrieked and yelled with excitement, and as she sailed away, she could hear the shrieks turn into gales of laughter. But in all these years, the old witch had never been frightened. She never laughed with excitement. Who was there to frighten her? She knew every witch and every ghost and every goblin in Witch Hollow. She even knew all the other witches' cats, for they were always Shadow's kittens. Still, the old witch couldn't help but wish. The more she thought about it, the more worried and the more angry she became. She jumped from her chair in a fury and hobbled out into the kitchen to look for her cat. Her voice was shrill and high. Shadow rose hastily from the basket, giving her kitten the loving push into a corner of the bed. She had hardly reached the kitchen door when the lonesome kitten called after her. Meow, meow. Bless the bumps on a toad, shrieked the old witch. What was that? It sounded sort of like a kitten, faltered Shadow. Sounded like, snorted the witch. What do you know about a kitten? Thump Thump went her feet towards the pantry. Well, I'll see for myself. Now the old witch flung open the cupboard door, and there in the middle of the basket, she saw the witch's cat's kitten. The witch's cat's white kitten. When she saw the old witch, the little kitten stood up on all her four wobbly little paws and said, politely, "How do you do?" The witch was not listening. Her voice rose higher and higher, and her fingers shook with anger as she pointed at the basket. White! White! That kitten's white! Get it out of my house! Get it out of the house this minute! I know it's white, the mother cat said meekly, but do witches' cats always have to be black? Certainly they do. A white cat will bring us bad luck. Take it away. Take it away. Shadow said, I'm getting old, as if she had not heard what the old witch said. I won't be able to ride with your broom much longer. You better keep this kitten. Never! I'll go without a witch's cat rather than keep this white one. She's bad luck, shrieked the witch. I must have a black cat. You're in a very bad temper, spoke up Shadow stubbornly. You'll like her better tomorrow. Temper? Who wouldn't have a temper? Here it's Halloween, a day when it's fun for everyone but me. Shadow was surprised. I thought you liked Halloween. The old witch was almost crying now. She was so sorry for herself all over again. Am I ever frightened? Does anyone ever try to scare me? And now in my very own house, everything is going wrong. You don't want to ride on my broom anymore, and you want me to ride with a white kitten? She reached down and picked up the little white kitten by the back of her neck and pulled open the kitchen door and tossed her into the yard. Shadow closed her eyes in misery. What would happen to her baby? If only the old witch would go at once, she could run outside and find the kitten. There must be some way of making the witch change her mind. The old witch wasn't happy. Now that was the trouble. There was a whirl in the air, and Shadow opened her eyes to see the old witch fly past the window on her traveling broom. She did not bother to peer out the window, as all the witches and their cats gathered together to start on their journey towards the earth. She did not even see the ghost, who left a few moments later. Shadow was very busy thinking. Perhaps there was a way to please the bad-tempered old witch and save her kitten, too. It was past midnight when the witches began returning. The old witch was the last to get back. She hobbled wearily in at her gate. The trip alone without Shadow had not been easy, as she was tired. Suddenly she stopped. There in the moonlight was a ghost. It wasn't any of her neighbors. It was the ghost of a cat. It did not mew. It did not cry. It just floated in the moonlight without making a sound. It floated towards her and rose on its hind feet, and in the shadows it seemed to grow bigger and bigger. And then it began to wail, I am the ghost of a witch's cat. The ghost of a witch's cat. I chill your bones. I haunt your homes, for I am the ghost of a witch's cat. Strange thing began to happen to the old witch. Her knees began to shake. Her hands and feet turned cold, and she caught her breath. Was she frightened? Could she be frightened? And then something brushed against her foot. It felt like a cat's bushy tail. Something pulled at her shoelaces on her high pointy shoes. Would a ghost cat do anything like that? Then the old witch opened her eyes, and the witch's cat's kitten stopped playing with her shoelaces. Happy Halloween, said the kitten. The witch began to chuckle. By the bumps on a toad, she laughed. You are my own Shadow's kitten, and you are the most wonderful, most frightening ghost kitten I have ever seen. From now on, I'm going to be the only witch in all of Witch Hollow with a ghost kitten instead of a black cat. Come, kitty, let's go home. If it had not been so dark, and if the old witch had not been so busy smiling at the witch's cat kitten, she might have seen Shadow walking close behind them, and Shadow was purring. What a clever, clever cat. These are wonderful stories as always, but it's getting late, and we have a big day ahead of us at the Witch's Ball. So, Jill, I'm going to settle in you for your nap with your bedtime story, which, as we always do, is Goodnight Goon, a terrifying parody. In the cold gray tomb, there was a gravestone in a black lagoon, and a picture of Martians taking over the moon. And there were 3 little mummies rubbing their tummies, and 2 hairy claws, and a set of jaws, and a loud screechy bat, and a black cat, and a skull and a shoe, and a pot full of goo, and a hairy old werewolf who was hollering, "Boo! Good night, tomb. Good night, goon. Good night, Martians taking over the moon. Good night, bones and the black lagoon. Good night, mummies. Good night, tummies. Good night, claws, and good night, jaws. Good night, moans, and good night, groans. Good night, screechy bat, and good night, hat. Good night, skull, and good night, shoe. Good night, creatures. Good night, goo. And good night to the old werewolf hollering, "Boo! Good night, you. Get under there. Good night, monsters everywhere." And good night to you all. Thank you very much. Happy Halloween!